Welcome to the third and final installment of the Egypt and Jordan sabbatical log. After seeing Abu Simbel, we immediately took the bus back to the Aswan airport. We had one last day in Cairo, and this time we got a room with a view of the pyramids. It was a big adjustment to get used to the traffic again. Over here, that's a man walking across the street of absolutely stopped traffic with a board of uncooked bread on his head. On our last day, Sarah and I took a tour of Islamic Cairo. We started with the Citadel, and the most recent mosque we would visit, and that's the Muhammad Ali Mosque. This is the Egyptian ruler, of course, not the American boxer. From the outside, the Muhammad Ali Mosque resembles the Hagia Sophia and the Blue Mosques, but inside, it freely mixes Islamic and European aesthetics in a very cosmopolitan way. At the top of the Citadel, you can get a great view of Cairo and the next two stops that we'd be going to. The Mosque Madrasa of Sultan Hassan, which is in the top photo on the left, and the Al Rafa'i Mosque, which is on the right. These two shots below are of the earlier masterpiece of the Sultan Hassan Mosque. And these are actually in the interior with the madrasa where all four of the schools of law were taught. But the one that was followed by Egypt is in the niche to the left, which is in the courtyard facing Mecca, so that's where the mihrab is properly set up. To the right is our favorite guide Ahmed, who we were lucky enough to get again, and we want to thank him one more time and Memphis Tours for a fantastic time in Egypt. Our fourth and final mosque was the Abbasid masterpiece, the Mosque of Ibn Tulun. And it's absolutely huge, with a spiraling minaret like the one in Samarra, Iraq, on the Great Mosque there. And it has this giant congregational courtyard. As you can see, there is almost no one there. Egypt needs to find a way to market these treasures as tour destinations too. So we followed that with the best meal we'd had in Egypt. So what you see there is chicken orzo soup, stuffed peppers and zucchini, little spiced beef sausages, a much better stuffed pigeon, and the reason we'd come, an Egyptian fried duck, plus a little dessert. In the second half of the day, we went back to the Egyptian Museum and did a deeper dive. And as you can see, on the left, they're in the process of moving to a much bigger, more modern facility. So some masterpieces, like on the right, of the tomb statues of Rahotep and Nofret, will be in the newer, nicer museum in the future, but for now, you've got to fight the crowds and the tight spaces to get a good look. So these are around, 4,500 years old, and they're in miraculous shape. The color's still there, and up close you can see the sparkle in their eyes, which are made of a different material than the plaster sculptures. So if you look really closely right here, you can even see that these things are so realistic that there is natural hair from Nofret underneath the headband, and it's actually a wig on the outside, which was a fashion at that particular time. This is one big composite sculpture, so that's not separate hair and wig, but depicted in a single sculpture. The next day, we flew to Jordan, and we were there for just 3 days. The shot to the left is us up on the Acropolis in the center of Amman, and to the right is looking down just past the temple there at the Roman amphitheater below. Jordan has always been a place where east meets west, and it really still is. Jordan is a place today, it's clean, it's safe, it's lovely, but it is not cheap. And our driver heard upon arrival that we were only going to be there for 3 days, and he said, Jordan is more than just Petra. And boy, is he right. We're going to have to find a way to go back. On that same plateau is a museum, and you can see there some of the oldest sculptures of large-scale humans, dating back before the Bronze Age. On the right, you can see there's an Umayyad mosque, and it's accompanying complex. Um, Another way of talking about this Acropolis is the Castle Mount, because authorities put their mark on it by building new structures right next to the other since about the time of the Bronze Age itself. The next day, we went down to Wadi Rum, and these are Bedouin lands. This is the place where Lawrence of Arabia had been. But today Bedouins have figured out how to bring in tourists. And what you're actually looking at is a Bedouin tent that looks like a tent, but is really part of a luxury hotel. You can see it's got an air conditioned unit on the outside, and it's got fully plumbed bathrooms on the inside. To the far right, you can see that there are some uh, sort of super modern luxury room domes. And these really make you feel like you're in space. This is, in fact, the place where they filmed The Martian. When we come back, I think I'd like to stay there just to see the stars at night. We took a 4x4 ride out to see some of the natural beauty and formations, and this is a really absolutely gorgeous place. There's actually a gentleman meditating on the other side of that sort of mushroom rock who's left his camel out in front. I took the picture on the bottom for my friend and dean, Mike Sundquist, and I just want to point out to him that if you have camel traffic, you need appropriate signage. So we'd been going to a lot of museums, and when you go to too many museums, you start to look for placards and information and set up everywhere you go. And so when we saw this thing out in the desert, we just had to get up close and look at what it was. And it turned out it's not a placard. This was just a styrofoam cooler lid on top of a bush. We got into Petra really late, but not too late to go out to dinner. And it's a good thing too, because it was the best meal we had in Jordan. You can drink the water there, and so we actually got to eat some fresh vegetables. So we started with some salads and some hummus. Arugula never tasted so good. The drink below is an unsweetened lemon juice blended with mint and crushed ice. And then Sarah and I split the mixed kebab and a wonderful dish called mansaf. It's lamb shoulder, which you tear up over the rice and pour warm goat yogurt on. I mean, wow, just wow. It was absolutely fantastic. And then the lowest right picture is of a sesame cookie, which, as somebody with Chinese heritage, seemed really familiar to me, and just kind of points out where this place is in terms of traditional trade. The very last stop on our trip was Petra. And most people just know the monument that they call the Treasury, but there are over 2,000 smaller monuments, some just small carved rock caves, and others fairly magnificent that make up part of this site. It was recently occupied by Bedouins who had lived there for hundreds of years, and these folks still come down and are able to graze their goats there, which you see happening on the right. So you descend deep into a canyon to go see the treasury. And you can see how the ancient Nabateans were able to hide out here and people weren't able to find them. Under Roman occupation, a water system was created so that drinking water could be brought to the bottom after the river was diverted, because this place descends something like 400 meters. It was subject to terrible flash floods. So this is the Roman system coming in on the side of the wall, and it even had places where one could divert water to take it out for drinking. If you're an Indiana Jones fan, the canyon here was one of the places where part of that film was shot. And you have to descend for about a 45-minute walk until you finally get to this beautiful sort of gap. And as soon as you walk past, boom, the treasury. It's right there, cut into the face of the cliffside in front of you. And it's huge, it's magnificent, but what you can't see here is how kind of claustrophobic it is up against the next cliff wall. I'm just about standing right on it. So we hired a local guide to help us scramble up the canyon wall on the opposite side I was just talking about, so that we could see it from above. And at the top was a little tea shop where you could, for the charge of 1 dinar, have an absolutely great view, which otherwise you can't get to, and a cup of tea. And so up on the top, we were able to use the camera to zoom in, and you can even see at the very top of the treasury where people had shot it, hoping that it would sort of pay off in gold for them. This place was a tomb and never a treasury, but that's what the legend was. Now, we could have spent at least another 2 days exploring Petra itself, and we could have gone into the canyon for at least another 3 hours of hiking. But we had a plane to catch, so we had to get out of there fairly quickly. So we hired on with some donkeys. I actually got a mule, which is why I'm a little higher up there than the other people, to take us out of the canyon into a nearby village. And I want to thank Steve for arranging this part, our tour guide, and for Decock Tours for arranging this part of our trip. They were absolutely fantastic. I would not hesitate to use them again in the future. And we'll just have to figure out a time where we can come back and explore the rest of Petra and all of Jordan in the future. Thanks for listening to the Egypt and Jordan sabbatical log. I hope you enjoyed.